You're listening to The Sizzle on Iron Skillet Radio and Iron Skillet Television.
The show goes on! This is my home!
Jason Goff is here, and nothing else needs to be said.
Nah, don't do
Goff
that.
is in the building, my dude.
Good to see you, brother.
It's same here. So, Zach Levine signs a big deal, and we keep hearing the Bulls talk about core continuity. Like, that's a big catchphrase for them. What does re-signing Zach do for that core continuity?
It not only stabilizes what you have right now, but it extends it to the future when you talk about guys like Dalen Terry and Patrick Williams and Ayo Dosunmu, like some of that young core, that second generation of Bulls basketball that's trying to be cultivated right now. It's about those guys also seeing that if you do work hard, if you do play through injury, if you do lead in a different way, if you do take your game to a next level defensively, round out some of your weaknesses, that this organization will reward you. So all the things that we've heard about the Chicago Bulls and how people have talked about them nationally for the last 10 years or so, it's good to kind of get that culture moving in a different direction and signing a guy like this. Because if you think about it, how many great player careers have we seen extended in the last 15 years or so? All right, Derrick Rose obviously with the knee injuries, and then Jimmy Butler playing on several different teams after the Bulls develop and draft him. It's good to see what draft assets can get you in Zach Levine, right? Because Jimmy Butler was a draft pick, but he got you Zach Levine and Lowry in the seventh pick and all that. But you not only got that and you developed it, and now you're rewarding it. So I think it's good for franchise morale. It's good for the young guys, and it's also good for stabilizing right now.
What do you think of the addition of Andre Drummond?
I think it's a pretty decent pickup, to be honest with you. I mean, the backup center situation was tenuous at best last year. You had Derrick Jones Jr. playing 5 at times. You had Javonte Green playing 5 at times. And Andre Drummond, if you go and listen to Bulls Talk podcast that got dropped this morning, Rob Schaefer makes terrific points about some of the things that are overstated about Andre Drummond because of what you see in the numbers, and some of the things that are understated about his fall off. I think he last year was put into a position where he had to play minutes for a title contender, and he fared well, right? There were really good stretches of basketball for Andre Drummond last year. He's kind of like one of those utility guys in baseball where the more at-bats, you might expose some of the weaknesses, so you might want to limit those minutes. But if you're talking about 15, 20 minutes off the bench, or a spell where he could start for a week or so like a backup quarterback would if you had an injury, I think he's one of those guys that's not only a serviceable big, but a guy who's a veteran and has been through some things who when you go up against the Milwaukees, when you go up against the Bostons of the world, you're not going to have that kind of inexperience in terms of your backup players or your depth positions.
He could be a lot of fun in some pick-and-roll offensive stuff. I do worry about him in pick-and-roll defense.
And if you look at some of his per 36 turnover numbers, like he's a guy that he's a good passer, but sometimes he gets a little fancy with it.
Oh, okay.
He turns the ball over, but he's one of those guys that if you're running and you need somebody to box out, grab a rebound, secure the defensive glass, do work on the offensive glass and rim protect, you can tell what they're trying to do around Vooch, and that pick and roll defense, the rim defense is necessary. There's a lot of Mo Bamba talk, right? So you have to have somebody that you can bring in when people are getting into the lane unencumbered and thinking they can just throw up teardrops.
The reports were that the Bulls seem to have the better offer on the table for Danilo Gallinari. Yeah. He chooses the Celtics. Should Bulls fans be concerned that was the case?
I mean, they went to the finals, right? So if you're talking about what a veteran is feeling like, okay, I got a few spins left at this, where should I go? And if he knew that Malcolm Brogdon was going to be a Celtic as well, like the Celtics, I was like, all right, maybe this is their first little bite at the apple. Maybe we won't see him for 2 or 3 years. Maybe they have to get a different core. I think they're right back in the mix because of their point guard need. A guy like Danilo Gallinari, though, for me, every stop has been one where he's become too important, if that makes any sense.
For sure.
Atlanta and the Clippers before that and Denver before that. He's a guy that you don't want to have to rely on for 20, 22 points in a playoff game like his last few stops. So I think he's also looking at it as I can be the guy, instead of Grant Williams taking some of those shots, I can be the guy who gets hot in a final series and gets the true glory that I deserve.
Whether it's on the podcast or you on Twitter, the Patrick Williams subject matter is key. So the Bulls are obviously like counting on him from a developmental standpoint.
Yeah.
What are the steps that he needs to take, and what's possible? Like, let's start talking in those types of terms. Because you know, like, he's a number 4 pick. He should be a superstar. What do you think is possible?
Well, it has to be a little, I won't say alarming, but a little concerning that we keep lowering the bar in terms of what he is supposed to be. And I think the team dynamic has lowered it for him too, right? Because when he got drafted, it's a totally different team than to now, right? So we're talking about Zach and nobody else pretty much being in front of him when he got drafted. Now it's DeMar DeRozan, Lonzo Ball, Alex Caruso, guys who are going to eat offensively before he does, right? Nikola Vucevic. The issue now is, can Billy Donovan make him be aggressive with the things that he's calling for him, right? Like the catch and shoot Patrick Williams, we've seen it go in, but when we see Patrick on the weak side duck ins, or when we see Pat moving on the baseline without the ball and having to attack the basket, he's kind of one of those guys that you have to push towards the basket. What's possible for him? I'm still not going to sell on Patrick Williams at this point, because there's a lot of people around the NBA who still think there's something there, and he's still young. The point is, you don't want to get this close to having to pay somebody and not know exactly what that value truly is, and they kind of went through that with Lowry Markkanen. And I'm not comparing him to Lowry Markkanen, but the situations are similar, where you've gotten this far into their first deal and you're still up in the air about what their true value is. But I think he's a guy who, if Patrick Williams could score 13, 14 points a game and play the kind of defense that we've seen 3-and-D guys play, sky's the limit for what this team can be. He's probably 2 or 3 on most important Bulls in this organization right now.
What else do the Bulls need, and can they find it in free agency?
I
only got a minute.
Is Giannis available? The Eastern Conference is nasty, man. Like, all that talk that we talked about the Western Conference for a decade plus, it's the East now, right? Atlanta goes out and get DeJounte Murray. Malcolm Brogdon is now at Boston. Milwaukee's still Milwaukee. What the Bulls need is good health and 4 through 9 to be not only serviceable, but above standard. Like, if you're going to trot out your big 3 being those 3 guys, then the complementary pieces have to be more than complementary. So, the moment Arturas Karnisovas and Mark Eversley were hired, there was a big hooray that went up around this city. And all I'll say is, look at the organizations who are run well around the NBA. If you believe in those 2 guys, I do. If you believe in those 2 guys, then believe that, this thing is going to take a little bit longer because of how bare the cupboard was. They've got him into immediate relevancy, but the toughest part is making that second jump from relevancy to greatness. And sometimes things have to move around. Are the players on this team now that are going to be champions in 4 or 5 years? Who knows? But I think trusting them the same way you applauded them coming in would be the best way to answer that question, which is, I don't know what they need right now.
This is the best in the business right here. Jason Goff, you see him on all of our Bulls coverage, and he's the man, and we appreciate you coming in, especially on a holiday weekend, to come and hang out with us.
My man, I appreciate you, bro.
I do.
Yes, sir.
You know who it is. You know what it is. It's the sizzle in the building. And guess what? We got the little money. We got the whole table. We got everything you need right now. You know who's in the building with the sizzle. A-Train is here. J Sizzle's here. G Sizzle is here. And we are here to talk about NBA free agency.
Yeah.
Look, man, we got to talk about a lot of movement, a lot of things going on. I think one of the first things we'll get to, because everybody knows we've got to talk about what's going on in Chicago first, because, that's what we do. We talk about Chicago and we talk about Chicago ball. So look here, Zach Levine. All right, let's just get out the gate. Zach Levine gets a max contract, $215 million. He is now the highest paid Chicago Bull of all time, surpassing the $100 million mark. And so, Jay, let's start with talking about the benefits of bringing Zach Levine back on a max deal for the Bulls.
So I don't know how I feel about bringing your number 2 player back on a max deal.
Shade, let's begin.
I'm like, what does that say about? I mean, you drag in Andre Drummond.
Yeah.
You know, 5 years too late. You know, so I'm like, oh, what was it just a name? Was that just a name signing? I'm not understanding that one at all. But here's the thing about Zach Levine, right? I guess you look at Zach Levine, he is a tier 2 superstar, right? That I don't think he's enough in himself to make that much of a change to carry you to a championship. And we all find out that it takes more than just one. But is he your top dog? Did they get Scottie Pippen Jr. instead of Scottie Pippen? You know what I'm saying? That's the question right now, because we've seen Zach Levine shine, but we've also seen him not shine at all. You know, when they need him, he went away. And if it wasn't for DeMar DeRozan this year, who really carried the load for the Bulls, you know, now are they counting on a aging DeMar DeRozan to be the same guy again as Zach Levine because he's happy now because he's sitting on some big chips that he's going to keep grinding like he keeps grinding? I don't know. I don't know if DeMar DeRozan isn't there. Is Zach Levine enough to carry you forward? That's what your max deal player is supposed to be. I don't think so.
A-Train, let me ask this. If you lose Zach Levine, as far as plus goes, and we're dealing with contracts, you couldn't get dollar for dollar market value for Zach Levine, and you couldn't get anybody else. So in signing Zach Levine, Train, is this somebody that even if he doesn't meet expectation, the Bulls had to have him on that sideline?
I mean, I will have to piggyback off of what Jay is saying. You know, I feel like Levine is not the type of person that's going to lead a team to an NBA final. He's not. I mean, he doesn't have that alpha dog mentality. He's not the top dog. And, you know, and if he wants to be a part of this little run that the Chicago Bulls are on, and I give it this because, I mean, it's a little run, and I feel like they're a team that is starting to become exciting, and it's starting to bring, you know, I said, Jay, my turn. I feel like this is the best Bulls basketball we've seen in a while. I will have to agree to that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, even you, Jay, will have to agree to that. This is the best Bulls basketball we've seen in at least a decade. Yeah, so, I mean, if it keeps Chicago lively, I mean, that's awesome. But, I mean, I feel like Levine needs more. He needs more weapons in his case to lead a team to the finals.
You know, and like you said, yeah, this is the best Bulls team we've seen, but we know the Bulls were a bull for a while there anyway, right? So
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Right, but a little less bull beep doesn't mean that your team is really that good. I look at them, how can they compete in the East with the team that they have right now?
I'm not saying I'm not saying they're the best team in the East, but I do
no. How can they compete in the East right now? You know what I'm saying? Because we're looking for DeMar DeRozan to have another superstar year again. You know, another top 10 Sports Center night. Oh, there's DeMar DeRozan hitting another shot. There's another. Those should be Zach Levine highlights, right?
They should.
I don't know if we've seen the best of Zach Levine.
No,
maybe just put that out there. Maybe he was like a supernova. He went super. You know what I'm saying? And now he's just collapsing on himself. You know, because we know we had the knee injury. We're not sure what is he completely back from that. We saw he was hampered by that a little bit toward the end of the Bulls run. We saw late in games he would go away. You wouldn't see him. The best thing he does is attack the basket. And we saw that at times he was not attacking the basket when he needed to attack the basket. I'm going to assume that when he was doing the triple, quadruple dunks in the NBA All-Star game, in the dunk contest or whatever he was doing over there, that he was fully back. But we saw later on that he was not. So the question is, can he stay healthy, and can he be that guy who has that Ja Morant mentality that he's just going to keep crashing the rim and crashing the rim? Because that's his game, is flying and attacking the rim. It's not him sitting outside shooting jump shots like he relegated himself to do last year. He's not that guy. He's not going to shoot from that high percentage, and they're going to let him sit out there at the arc and let him fire them all day long. I just don't know if this is a guy that you could put it in his hands in the fourth quarter and let him carry you, because that's what he's going to have to do now, because the Bulls are signed in for 5 years. For at least 3 years, he's going to have to be here because that contract's going to be too big, right? I'm wondering how many I wonder how many looks we have for Zach Levine for other teams to give him a max deal. I didn't hear any other teams talking about they really wanted Zach Levine at that price. So you're absolutely right. Did the Bulls have to sign him? Yeah, they did. I think they had to sign him because they had no other option, to tell you the truth. But again, I think this puts the Bulls in neutral basketball hell.
Yeah, we talk about neutral basketball hell, and we've always discussed that in reference to the Bulls and where they stand. The Bulls also made 2 additions, as Jay mentioned earlier. They added Andre Drummond and Derrick Jones Jr., both mid-level exceptions at $6.6 million apiece. And it makes it, again, an odd pairing, because now you've got your rookie that you just drafted. Now you've got another 6'7", 6'8", 6'9" swing, and none of them can defend against Giannis. None of them can stop anybody on Boston. None of them can stop anybody in Philly or in Miami. So again, now you're stuck with the conundrum of what do we do now with just Zach Levine and then DeMar DeRozan. You still got Vooch, who, and I'll say this, there was not a problem that Orlando had in giving over Vucevic. They said, hey, Wendell Carter might work. We'll just collect all the big men we can find in the country, and we'll just put them all on one team and see what we come out and shake out with. But right now, you're still looking at a hole, a glaring hole at the 4 spot that can only be filled by Jay's favorite player, and that's Patrick Williams. So right now,
where the Leprechauns?
Yeah, well, you've got a team right now. We still don't know what's going on with Lonzo Ball's knee, if he will be 100%. You've got to ask yourself now, if that's the problem, that point, if it's shaky, then it offsets everything else. It's like having a house with no doors. It's hard to keep anything in there, and everything comes in and blows through. So now,
can I ask a question though, right quick?
Yeah,
you had some other guys out here that are on supermax deals. Get ready, Bradley Beal,
right.
James Harden, right. Would you have rather seen one of them be a Chicago Bull rather than sign to Zach Levine?
Yes.
I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not even sure if, when it comes to Bradley Beal, I don't know what I'm seeing with Bradley Beal. You're seeing somebody who's a superstar for the Wizards, but is Bradley Beal any different from Zach Levine? Aren't they the same brother, just different complexions? They do the same thing. They function the same way. They're good at attacking. They're not good at distributing. And neither of their teams do anything better with just them on the line.
Yeah, so I mean, and that's my whole point right there. It's like Zach Levine, like you settled for the Supermax. And because you had to. I mean, it really wasn't else you could really do. But again, the Bulls, I mean, Vucevic should have been that guy, but Vucevic is not. Vucevic needs to be on a team that's going to get out and run so they can get out and stretch the floor. And the Lonzo Ball injury is a huge deal for the Chicago Bulls. If he doesn't come back, he's setting his franchise back another 5 years. Right. They need that point guard. They need that guy to lead them. And they look pretty good when they were moving. And like you said earlier, they looked like they had a cohesive, at least somebody who knew how to put together a basketball team. Let's say that. But now, can they put together a championship team?
Welcome
Welcome to NBA free agency. It doesn't get much better or bigger than one of the greatest players ever wanting to change teams again. Let's bring in our guy, Casey Johnson, to sort through it all. Before we get to Zach Levine, Casey, let's start with Kevin Durant. He requests a trade from the Nets today. Do the Bulls have a realistic shot at landing KD?
Yeah, Kevin Durant said to NBA free agency, hold my beer. He's kind of commandeered the spotlight, man. I would say it's a long shot, Pat. I mean, obviously, you still have to pick up the phone and make that call to Brooklyn and, you know, ask what the parameters are. But look, it's going to be a monumental return. He's clearly, you know, top 3 or 4 player in the league and has 4 years left in that deal. So if you're trading for him, he's going to be with your franchise theoretically for a long time. So it would take quite the haul, but it's certainly a phone call you have to make.
All right, well, let's play around with it. What would be in that package if you're the Bulls?
Yeah, so Rob Schaefer and I over at NBC Sports Chicago have already proposed a few packages. We put on our GM hats. I mean, it's clearly going to be one of DeMar DeRozan or Nikola Vucevic. They need an all-star. Probably DeMar DeRozan. One of Patrick Williams for sure. One of Alex Caruso or Kobe White, and then 2 first-round draft picks. The important thing to remember about the Nets is they all of their first-round draft picks to the Houston Rockets as part of that James Harden trade. So they are looking not to bottom out because it doesn't incentivize themselves to bottom out. So they want to stay competitive, which is why they need an all-star. They want to also get future draft capital for themselves because they owe it all to the Rockets. And my guess is they're going to be focused on younger all-stars than DeMar DeRozan and Nikola Vucevic. So I personally would be surprised, but again, the Bulls have to at least get in that conversation.
Casey, when Kevin Durant's burner Twitter account was exposed, there were some negative Billy Donovan tweets there. How might that impact a possible deal?
Yeah, I'm a pretty love-hate relationship guy with Twitter, and that's a detail I was not aware of. So I'm glad you're informing me of this. I would just say this, you know, clearly you would have to do your due diligence if you're going to send that much out that Kevin Durant would be happy with your franchise. And, you know, I know that Billy has talked very highly of Kevin Durant in the past. I don't know Kevin Durant personally, so I can't speak for him. But I think that's something you figure out before you obviously agree to send that much out in a potential trade package.
All right, what's the latest on Zach and the Bulls closing in on that max deal, 5 years, $215 million?
Yeah, so I reported this morning that Zach is telling people he plans on re-signing with the Bulls. When that happens, I'm not sure. Zach all along, told us that he was going to go through the process. I know that the Bulls have been very respectful of his wishes when we've asked them for a timeline. When we talked to both Mark Eversley and Arturas Karnisovas on the draft, they said they had no idea, and they look forward to talking to Zach and his representative and Rich Paul. So that meeting will take place tonight, if it hasn't already, while we're talking. And, the Bulls are prepared to do whatever it takes to sign him. That means a max deal. They know Zach Levine wants a max deal, and all signs point to him accepting that max deal. But Zach has been pretty consistent. He wants to go through the process, see what's out there, survey his options. But at the end of the day, like most people, I expect Zach Levine to be back with the Bulls.
Could Danilo Gallinari be on the Bulls' radar if the Spurs indeed decide to waive him?
Yeah, they're not only on his radar, they're very much in the mix on that deal, Pat. I reported this morning they're willing to do a 2-year deal in the $7 to $8 million range. And from my understanding, the Heat are also interested, as are the Celtics. And it sounds like the Bulls are right in that finalist stage. Now, again, with the Durant situation developing, I don't know what that's going to do to free agency. It might put some decisions or some, conclusions on hold. But I do know that the Bulls have strong interest in that marriage happening. And, Gallinari has a significant past with 2 people with the Bulls. He spent 4 seasons in Denver while Arturas Karnisovas was in the front office there, and then played, obviously, for Billy Donovan in Oklahoma City for 1 season. So the Bulls are working those relationships and trying to add that veteran shooter.
We've heard a lot about Kobe White being shopped. Do you think he ends up staying with the Bulls when it's all said and done?
I would say this. I think it's more likely than not that he is back. And here's why, Pat. The Bulls definitely took some phone calls on him leading up to the draft, and they were pretty firm in their asking price for him. They wanted not only a young player, but also some draft capital. As we all know, the Bulls' draft capital coffers are a little bit bare with all the first-round picks they sent out to acquire Nikola Vucevic and DeMar DeRozan. So their asking price was pretty high, and they do see a role for Coby White, even though they have a crowded backcourt, and that's because the health of Lonzo Ball remains a question mark. Shooting remains a question mark. That's strong insurance both in the Lonzo Ball situation and in the shooting department category. So I don't think Coby White is untouchable by any means, but if you're asking me right now to predict where he's playing next season, I predict it will be the Bulls.
Just on the topic of Lonzo Ball, do you think we'll see him in the Summer League play?
No. That was kind of misconstrued a little bit by what Mark Eversley said when he said we're going to see him out in Las Vegas. All that is guys like Zach Levine, Lonzo Ball, they always check in on their team. They're sitting courtside supporting their guys. He might stop by a practice and maybe get some shots up or things like that, but he will not be playing. In fact, as Mark Eversley detailed on draft night, he's still rehabbing that bone bruise. It's not the meniscus surgery repair. That went pretty well. It's the bone bruise that predated that meniscus surgery. And, I asked Mark Eversley that night flat out, if the season were going on right now, would Lonzo Ball be a full participant? And Mark Eversley answered that he would have to check with his performance staff on that. If that answer is a yes, Pat, he's offering a yes to us. So I read that as a no. And it's just a troubling situation that seems to continue to linger over the Chicago Bulls.
Heard a lot of chatter about the Bulls being interested in trading for Rudy Gobert. Is that interest being overstated?
According to my sources, it is. Obviously, in this league, things can change, and you're always open to fluidity. But both leading up to the draft and in this free agency period, I've been told that those situations are overstated. In fact, I've been told the Bulls are inquiring on Andre Drummond's services. We know that Tony Bradley picked up his player option to return to the Bulls, so they do already have two centers on the roster in Nikola Vucevic and Tony Bradley, and they are targeting Andre Drummond as another big man for depth up in that front court.
How much sleep are you going to get combined over the next 3 days?
I'm pretty used to the rhythms of the NBA season. Been doing this a while, but to answer your question, very little, and coffee is my friend.
He is our max contract insider. He is the one and only K.C. Johnson. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Pat. I appreciate it.
Make sure that you follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Iron Skillet Sports. And remember to like, share, and subscribe to Iron Skillet Sports on YouTube at Iron Skillet Sports.